It has been called a flop, a letdown, even a failed album. Nearly erased from the pages of music history, this ghost record for one of the most successful rock bands ever assembled has been overshadowed by the massive success of its predecessor and its follow-up for that matter. But climbing to number 4 on the Billboard Album Chart, selling over 2 million US units and producing 3 top 10 hits, most artists would die for that. But what happened? How did one of the most anticipated albums of its day become a lost chapter in this band's history? Well, it all starts with a key member quitting. Get the story next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. If you love rock and roll, subscribe below right now. Get the stories of the songs straight from the legends. Hit the red button to be a part of this nostalgic channel. Also, our Patreon is full of more great content. It helps us keep this channel daily. Check it out below as well. In February of 1992, Red Hot Chili Peppers made what lead singer Anthony Kiedis considered to be a disastrous performance on Saturday Night Live. Much of that was thanks to guitarist John Frusciante, who was at the time, he was in a dark and dangerous place for that matter. Disillusioned by the band's popularity and steeped in heroin abuse, he began isolating himself from his bandmates. Well, that night, Kiedis was already apprehensive because Under the Bridge was their second number. The song was a challenge for him to sing, and he was dependent upon John for his cue. But John was in a sour mood at that point. During dress rehearsal, he played Under the Bridge in a completely different key, out of tune, even in a different timing. Basically, he reinvented the song. And afterward, Kiedis tried to hash things out with John, but he wasn't interested in talking. The show's first number was Stone Cold Bush, which went well enough till the end of the song. Kiedis, doing what he does, burst into a fit of wild stage antics, and he kicked John Frusciante in the process. Whether or not it was intentional, John was not happy about it. When the Peppers returned on stage for Under the Bridge, Frusciante may as well have been on another planet. Started playing a version of the song that Anthony had never heard before. Live in front of millions of people. It's SNL, Saturday Night Live. Kiedis was just left scrambling for the right key. But the ad-libbing didn't end there. Instead of singing his backup vocals, John simply screamed at the top of his lungs. Some fans saw John's deviations as creative, a beautiful take on the song. But Anthony Kiedis felt like he had been stabbed in the back and hung out to dry, all of this in front of America. Ironically, Frusciante's embittered performance, it sealed his own doom. Following week, Blood Sugar Sex Magik, the record, it shot through the roof, and the Chili Peppers' popularity skyrocketed from there. From then on, John's behavior became increasingly erratic. While on tour in Japan, John told the guys that he was done. I have to go home right away. I can't do this anymore. I will die if I don't get out of this band right away. John played one last solo show and afterwards disappeared from Red Hot Chili Peppers. Chili Peppers' first choice for a new guitarist, that was Dave Navarro. He had recently quit Jane's Addiction. However, at that time, he was more interested in developing his new project, Deconstruction. After playing with multiple guitarists, Xander Schloss, Eric Marshall, and Jesse Tobias, they reconnected with Navarro just months later. Apparently, drummer Chad Smith, who had been hanging out with the guitarist, told Kiedis, I have a feeling that Dave Navarro was ready to play with us. So they actually fired Tobias and they hired Navarro. Dave would have a distinct influence on the band and the forthcoming album. Dave's style was and is drastically different from the rest of the Peppers. And he lived in a perpetual no-funk zone. Instead, he favored a more textured and lush sound. But he was so skilled and such a quick learner that the rest of the band was ready to explore new territory. Navarro's contributions would play a major role in the album's success, also the eventual disappearance into the background. Meanwhile, another unexpected development would have a lasting impact on the record's legacy. By January 1994, Anthony Kiedis had been sober from some pretty hard drug abuse for about 5.5 years at that point. That's a tale he told in part in the band's smash hit Under the Bridge. We did a video on that you can see.
My only friend is the city I live in.
And yes, sometimes life has a wicked sense of humor. In January of 1994, Kiedis showed up for an appointment to get his wisdom teeth removed. To maintain his sobriety, Anthony always told medical professionals that he was allergic to narcotics, and for this procedure, he gave the same speech. Local anesthetics only. However, as the operation progressed, I guess complications arose, and they had to cut a badly impacted tooth out of his mouth, and this meant putting Kiedis under with Valium. Now, reluctantly, he agreed. In that moment, an IV of liquid Valium ran straight up his arm, into his brain, and enveloping him in a golden cloud of euphoria. Although the oral surgeon got the tooth out, sinister reawakened inside Kiedis' head. The voices of addiction were back. When Anthony emerged, he insisted he needed Percodan for the pain. The bottle was all but empty when he got home. Deep into an opium buzz, Anthony drove to downtown LA looking for a more potent fix. He, of course, found it, and from then on out, Anthony had a new secret life, one that would postpone the band's upcoming album again and again and again. Not long after Anthony's relapse, the Chili Peppers got to work writing and recording their 6th studio album, One Hot Minute. It was coming off a huge record, of course. They had everything that they needed at their disposal. Their label was supportive and it was prepared to spend money to duplicate the band's success. Now, to get things rolling, the Chili Peppers rented a farm in Hawaii. But it wasn't a productive trip per se. Said drummer Chad Smith, "We went to Hawaii to get away, but it wasn't like this fire of writing 8 hours a day. There was no creative spark." Kiedis said the surroundings were just too beautiful and it was hard to focus on writing music. I totally get it. When they did jam, it was a slower, different flow than they were used to. In retrospect, there was clearly a lot of pressure on them. Coming off such a massive album, they were under a microscope. Expectations were high. And multiple trips to Hawaii turned out to be more vacation than writing retreat. As we continue to break down this album and this song, I want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear. Right now, you can get hundreds of different frames for only $6.95. Just in time for back to school. Choose your styles at zenni.com. By the summer of 1994, the band had cobbled together enough material to get started in the studio. Though Kiedis was far behind on writing lyrics, they started cutting some basic tracks. Said Anthony, "A lot had to do with my state of mind. When you're at odds with yourself, it is hard to create. Sometimes the writing process is as easy as opening up the window and letting in the breeze. Sometimes it's like chiseling away at a block of granite with a pencil." Gosh, that's a great quote about creativity for sure. Since Kiedis' initial relapse, he had kept his back and forth fight between addiction and sobriety a secret from everybody. But looking closely at what lyrics he had come up with, the clues were clearly there. For instance, in Warped, he wrote, "My tendency for dependency is offending me. It's upending me. I'm pretending to see to be strong. And free from my dependency, it's warping me." Anthony's battles continued for the rest of the year, practically grinding the One Hot Minute to a halt in the process. He was no longer the singer that he used to be. He was skinny with bad-colored skin, scraggly hair, and really dead-looking eyes. Feigning sickness, no one in the band suspected substance abuse at that point. At least not until Anthony's girlfriend caught him red-handed. It was in December of '94. Ashamed and embarrassed, he promised to get clean and was surprised to get support from his bandmates. Longtime friend and bassist Flea was like, "Dude, I'm really sorry you had to go through that. I'm glad that you're alive. Let's go party." Now, by that, he meant, let's go write music. January of 1995, the two took a trip to Teos in New Mexico, and there they holed up in an authentic adobe villa, and they wrote 4 or 5 songs in less than a week. Back in the studio in February, a sober Kiedis knocked out his vocals. However, afterwards, Kiedis celebrated by getting high again. Suspicious and concerned, Navarro had the band's accountant trace Anthony's last credit card transaction. He and Kiedis' girl then tracked him down at a Holiday Inn, and they got him right into rehab. Anthony stayed for his 30-day stint. He did the work. He got clean. And though this wouldn't be Kiedis' last wrestle with substance abuse, rehab would at least enable him to finish the album. Now, the following summer, the Peppers put the finishing touches on the record, and they finally put it out on September 12th of 1995. They released One Hot Minute to the world. Anthony called the album an exercise in self-awareness, honest and autobiographical. It was, of course, also a massive sonic shift for the band. Maybe the richest sounding record of their career. Navarro's extraordinary guitar work really differentiated One Hot Minute from the rest of the Chili Peppers catalog. The Red Hot Chili Peppers issued 5 singles from One Hot Minute. There was Warped, My Friends, Aeroplane, Shallow Be Thy Name, and Coffee Shop. One Hot Minute, for its part, was a hit straight out of the box and a mighty force in its day. On the US Billboard Album Charts, it climbed to number 4. Now, that's actually a huge achievement because it came up short thanks to Alanis Morissette in at number 3, Dangerous Minds soundtrack at number 2, and Hootie and the Blowfish at number 1. These were all massive 90s blockbusters to toil with. And in fact, Alanis and Hootie's records would both sell over 17 million copies. Huge. Internationally, One Hot Minute went to number 8 in Italy, number 7 in Scotland, number 6 in Canada, number 5 in the Netherlands, number 4 in Austria, number 3 in Germany, and Belgium, number 2 in the UK, Switzerland, and Norway. And it went to number 1 in Australia, Sweden, Finland, and New Zealand. This record was no slouch. Its chart rankings beat out or tied the phenomenal Blood Sugar Sex Magik in almost every country. Exceptions being the Netherlands, Canada, and the US, where Blood Sugar edged Hot Minute by a spot or 2. But think about that for a second. That's a big album. No doubt, the album's biggest single was My Friends.
My friends are so depressed.
Flea, who wrote the song's music, half-jokingly called it the moneymaker. But seeing how it went to number 1 on the US alternative chart and the mainstream rock chart really wasn't much of a joke. This song was seen by many as sort of a spiritual successor to Under the Bridge. I mean, maybe the fact that the two were standout ballads on high-intensity records made comparisons inevitable. I don't know. But My Friends was much, much more than a simple rehash of the Chili Peppers' iconic 1992 hit. With Friends, gone are the dark days of shooting up under an overpass. Instead, Kiedis looks outward, burdened by the grim and painful conditions his friends are suffering through at the moment. Personally, it's my favorite Peppers song ever. To me, it's one of the most moving songs of that time. Dominated by Navarro's traditional acoustic stylings, the feeling of My Friends is melancholy, yes, but also hopeful. And though Kiedis doesn't specify in the song who his friends are, bandmates present and past are all likely candidates. At the time, Flea was going through a harrowing divorce, and he just lost a close friend in River Phoenix. John Frusciante, no longer in the band, was dangerously sick from heroin addiction. His replacement, Dave Navarro, often struggled to fit in. And Chad Smith had his own share of down-and-out moments. Of course, other possibilities include former bandmates Hillel Slavik, Of course, lost to drug addiction, and Jack Irons, who left soon after that. Even Kurt Cobain's death was on Kiedis' mind at that time. Anthony actually wrote the track Tearjerker about the Nirvana frontman.
Hoping that the truth would not be true.
Regardless of who the song may or may not be about, My Friends is a bittersweet and worthy entry into the Red Hot Chili Peppers catalog. It reveals Kiedis as a changed man, focusing on the plight of others, looking outward. When Kiedis sings I Love All of You in a frail timbre,
I love all of you.
you can't help but be moved by his compassion for these trauma-abused friends. Reflecting on the song, Kiedis said that it made perfect sense to him. There was a period of my life where I looked around myself and all the people that I really cared about that were having incredibly difficult times in their lives. I saw people dying, and I saw people losing their minds and going insane, and I saw people disappearing into isolation and negativity, and I didn't understand why everybody that I seemed to care about was going crazy. In response, Kiedis asked himself, what could he do to be of service to these people? How could he support them? After a while, he realized that he just had to be there for them, no matter what.
So hard and lonely too.
It was all about showing love and respect, regardless of their state of mind or what kind of trouble they were in. Newcomer Navarro, for his part, called My Friends his favorite track on the album. It was definitely the most pop-oriented and formulaic song he'd ever been a part of. That's a compliment, actually. But the lyrics and the feeling of the song came from a place that he could really identify with. No doubt the rest of Anthony Kiedis' friends appreciated it as well. I already mentioned that My Friends went to #1 on a couple of U.S. charts, but internationally, it had some success as well. I mean, it went to number 40 in France, went to number 35 in Scotland, 29 in the UK, number 20 in New Zealand. It went 17 in the Netherlands, 15 in Australia, 11 in Canada, and number 4 in Iceland. Sadly, however, My Friends and the rest of One Hot Minute has all but been erased from pop culture memory, with little in the way of media placements and very few covers recorded online. One really cool one, the Foo Fighters' Taylor Hawkins, he teamed up with Chad Smith and Dave Navarro in 2021 for a rendition of the song. Obviously means even more now. I find it just crazy, though. It's one of the most cinematic songs in the Peppers canon. It's ripe for a comeback in film or TV. It's an absolutely breathtaking and heartfelt song. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. One of the Chili Peppers' best, in my opinion. According to setlist.fm, the first concert on record where My Friends was played was at Subterranea, London on September 27th of 1995. Fast forward to less than a year later on June 30th, 1996, and you have the last full-on Chili Peppers performance of the song in Finland. Setlist.fm tallies a total of 42 performances on record between those two dates. Other Hot Minute songs like Warped, Deep Kick, Coffee Shop, and Walkabout, they also haven't been played live since '97. Two exceptions exist from the album, P and Airplane.
Checking out this and that.
The former being played 83 times in the 2000s and the latter 43 times. Comparative to other Chili Peppers songs from that era, that's pretty sparse. I mean, for example, since 2000, the band has performed Under the Bridge over 550 times, Californication almost 700 times, and Give It Away about 750 times.
Give it away, give it away, give it away now. Give it away, give it away.
For further One Hot Minute snubbing, you can look to the Chili Peppers' 2003 Greatest Hits album. Of the 16 tracks, only one track from One Hot Minute made the cut. My Friends. Not surprisingly, with so many mega hits, Blood Sugar Sex Magik and Californication together had 9 tracks. But one track out of 16, no Warp, no Airplane. It seemed like they just wanted to forget their 1995 smash record.
I love
In all likelihood, the reason One Hot Minute has become a ghost album is due to Dave Navarro, or maybe more accurately, John Frusciante. Navarro ended up parting ways with the band before the release of '99's Californication. And of course, Frusciante rejoined the band. And when he did, he didn't want anything to do with One Hot Minute. According to Chad Smith, even though John was a huge Jane's Addiction fan, he absolutely refused to listen to anything off the album. Frusciante said that Navarro making the album with the Peppers was kind of like someone else sleeping with your girlfriend. And he just couldn't get over that. That, I think, is the initial driving force behind the downfall of One Hot Minute. It's curious, though, that so many years later, the album still remains in relative obscurity. Especially when John Kinghofer replaced Frusciante. Looking back, Chili Pepper manager Lindy Getz called Dave Navarro an amazing guitar player and said, "It is a shame that One Hot Minute album was never a huge hit, but I still thought it was the most rockingest album that they ever made." Legendary producer Rick Rubin agreed. The Chili Peppers were viewed as being on a downswing because the album only sold however many millions. And after Blood Sugar, no one had any realistic expectations that would match it in terms of sales. But even so, it is far from a flop. I bought this album the day it was released. This was back in the day where, you heard about an album through magazines and through MTV, and you waited ever so patiently for it to drop in record stores. It was an amazing time. You really savored the record. We waited a long time for a proper Chili Peppers album, and in my ears, One Hot Minute was worth the wait. But decades later, it remains a conundrum. I mean, it's an incredible record, but it's nearly extinct in the Red Hot Chili Peppers repertoire. For both of those reasons, it's more than lived up to its name. Leave us a comment about the Red Hot Chili Peppers and One Hot Minute. Do you remember this album? Or have you already forgotten about it? Tell us about it. Where do you think it ranks in the catalog? Also, your feelings about My Friends, your memories of this album, share them below. If you like this, check out our in-depth breakdown of Under the Bridge, backstory of that 90s standard. If you dig our content, take a second to subscribe. We would love to have you as part of our community. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friend.